Hello, wonderful. Raise your hand, not if you're driving, but otherwise, raise your hand if you have fallen to the praise of stress eating. I am raising both hands and 2 feet. And my guest, Dawn Cuckow, is also raising both hands. And I can't see her feet from underneath the Zoom camera, but I'm sure that too. And so often in times of stress, like, well, I know probably one of the things Dawn's going to talk about, in ancient days, like we would be starving and our bodies would be stressed, and then we would find berries and it would delight our brain and send these lovely sensors in our brains that said, oh, sugar, it's wonderful, you're going to live. And fast forward however many thousand years later, and all of a sudden sugar is very available. And yet our brain is still going, whoa, this is amazing. This is wonderful. And it is doing some tricky things to our bodies. Dawn, hello, and how are you?
Hi, well, thanks for inviting me here. I'm really delighted to be here.
Okay.
I actually feel now with your introduction that I should be lifting both my feet up so they can be seen on the camera, but I would have done, but I thought I might topple over backwards.
Oh, yes, it is, and it is a stressful topic, right? Like stress eating is a stressful topic, so it's worth it to just kind of laugh at ourselves and laugh at how biology makes it tricky for us and how emotions make it tricky for us. And yet we want a better plan moving forward, right?
Absolutely. And we can talk about that today. But actually, what I'd like to say that is if you stress eat, don't beat yourself up. It's actually not your fault. And if you've been told you lack willpower, which so many people are, it has nothing to do with willpower.
So what does it have to do with?
Well, it has to do with your body is set up for your stress response as a survival response. So actually, if you're fighting your natural stress response, you're fighting your body's survival instinct. So what do you think is going to win long term? Willpower or your body's survival instinct? And actually, willpower may work short term, but long term, it's always your survival instinct that wins.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Absolutely. And it's the oldest parts of our brains, right?
Yeah.
Our language brains are more developed. It's a newer part of our brains, but our animalistic ancient brains are like, I'm starving. Oh my gosh, there's fat, right? Fat from an animal. It's going to make me feel better because then I am going to survive and not die of starvation. And then here we are in the land of processed foods.
Yeah. Well, your body,
right?
Yeah, I mean, your body is set up for this survival fight or flight response. And our fight or flight response physically enables us to fight or to run away, which uses up a lot of energy. So your stress hormones don't know that nowadays that when you're stressed, you're probably not going to punch your boss or run away from your husband or whatever it is, whoever you're stressed with. You want to be sat at your desk fuming or in the car in a traffic jam. So you're sitting still, you're not using up a whole lot of energy. But your stress hormones don't know that. And so one of your stress hormones, cortisol, which stays high for quite a long time after that stress has passed, says, right, I need to refuel after all that energy has been used up. Therefore, I need to make this person eat high sugar, high fat foods.
Yes, I am so glad we're talking about this because I do think women in particular can just be so ugly to themselves about food, and it's just life is hard enough without us beating ourselves up in our own head.
Absolutely. It doesn't make you feel good, but even more, it keeps you stuck in that cycle. Beating yourself up does absolutely nothing to get you out of that whole emotional eating cycle. Whereas actually, if you start to be kind to yourself, and you can actually start to change things. Just see, well, I didn't do what I planned to do, but learn from it, and I'm going to do it differently next time. Why did I respond to stress in that way? And just start to think about it in a slightly different way. Because actually, when we beat ourselves up, I mean, there's a really interesting study done, and it's about the whole way we view healthy eating and diets. And they took 2 groups of dieters, and one group they gave both groups identical cakes, but they only told one group that this cake was low calorie and healthy. And both groups ate the cake. But what happened then was really interesting, because the group that had been told it was healthy and low calorie carried on eating healthily throughout the rest of the day. The other group decided they'd blown their diet, so they might as well give up for today. And they all went out and got fish and chips. So actually beating ourselves up keeps us stuck in that cycle of, oh, I'm bad, I failed, I may as well eat something more now. It doesn't help shift anything.
So with your clients, with what you do, if someone is in a cycle of stress, which I think the whole world has just been so stressed in the last 2 or 3 years, just such a interesting time, to be a human. And Dawn, I think we're decently close to the same age, so somewhere close to the same age. And when I think about kind of the world evolution, we weren't in World War II. We weren't in some of these, really terrible, tragic things. In the US, the Twin Towers was obviously terrible. But it was isolated, right? It happened in New York and it was bad. But then it stopped. It wasn't an ongoing, I know there was a war in Afghanistan and that kind of thing, but it wasn't in our home, right? It's not like we could kind of separate it out. But COVID, we couldn't opt out of it, right? It was there. It was in our head. It was every time we saw someone in a mask or couldn't send our kids to school or were afraid or watch people die.
Yeah, I think the last few years have been very, very stressful, and we're not really designed. Talk about, our bodies are designed to respond in a particular way. We're also herd animals, group animals. We're not really designed to be so isolated. And so many people were so isolated on top of all the other stresses of worrying about their health, worrying about if they were going to be able to make an income during it, and all those other things. And people comfortate. And the other thing about stress, and I don't know if people have noticed this, but have you noticed that when you're stressed, you put on weight around your belly? And that is because that when you're stressed, then your body's on stress alert. So your cortisol, the stress hormone, tells your body to store it around your belly because that's close to your liver. And if another stressful situation occurs, your liver can quickly convert that fat back to energy to fuel the next fight or flight response. So if you're stressed, not only is it hard to lose weight, but it's hard to lose it particularly from around your belly. And of course, it's more of a health risk around your belly. So it's so important to find a way of dealing with your stress, whatever that is for you.
So do you recommend this is probably a both and conversation, but do you recommend kind of a long-term plan for ridding yourself of stress as well as kind of in the moments when you're tempted to reach for fish and chips or ice cream or whatever? Is it both a long-term?
Yeah, absolutely both. I look at both because what I do with people, I look at what's triggering their cravings, what's triggering that urge to overeat, what's triggering the reason why it's hard to lose weight, what's triggering their belly fat, and it can be different things for different people. And we've talked about stress, but that's just one of the many imbalances that can trigger you to gain weight. So the first thing is to actually understand what's triggering it. And then it's various imbalances in your body, whether it's hormone imbalances, whether it's low in certain nutrients, whether it's gut bacterial issues, whether it's exposure to obesogenic chemicals. There's a lot of different factors. And then once you know what's making it hard for you to lose weight or making you crave food or making you overeat, then you can start to make changes to rebalance your body. So I work with people to make step-by-step changes and each step is tailored to the imbalances in their body and their dietary preferences and requirements, because it's no good saying to someone, oh, follow this way of eating if it doesn't work for them, if they don't like it, but that works longer term, and you don't bring your body back into balance overnight. So it's really helpful to have strategies for when the cravings hit. So in fact, I've just run my very first Master Your Cravings workshop, which was absolutely great. So people came away with their own personal plan for what to do when the cravings hit.
Okay, you could do it for me. So if my craving hit, okay, so I know enough about my body to know that my trigger time is around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. Okay, right. It's actually not even the late night. It's trying to get that energy burst which is a survival technique, right? My body's okay, we've still got a lot more of the day to go. You need some energy to get you through the rest of the day, which usually means I want some simple carbohydrates.
Right. Okay.
Right?
So what I would say then is we'll talk in a minute. We'll talk about some things you can do in the moment. What I'd say is one step before that is, are you balancing your blood sugar levels? Because that time of day you've said is often when our blood sugar levels dip.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to lunch. What time do you have your lunch and what do you have? Do you include some protein with it?
Sometimes when I'm doing, yesterday I had a taco soup. So I had a good lunch yesterday, as meat and a lot of veggies and kind of a stew. And I had avocado with it for that fiber. That's a bigger lunch than I would usually have. But, that was, sometimes I'll do egg and avocado or chicken. This is when I'm eating pretty healthy. I mean, these are like, I'm doing pretty well. And I try to do that protein, fat, and fiber. But I mean, even yesterday with that very solid lunch, lots of protein, lots of fiber, fats from the avocado, and veggies, and meats. I was still like, oh, I need some potato chips here, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So maybe a bad habit.
So is it, but yeah, partly it can be habit. If we're used to eating at a particular time of day, then we want to eat then. But equally, it's not a bad idea to have something before it becomes a real craving.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe have a small snack slightly earlier. So does it have to be potato chips that you have, or could it be something else? What is it that you actually want? Is it that you just want the energy? And this is something for your listeners to think about for themselves, because for everyone it's going to be different. So what is it that you really want at that point in time? If for some people it might be something sweet. For some people it might just be anything to keep their energy going. For other people it might be something salty. It might be the taste, it might be the texture, it might be the way their body feels afterwards. So what is it that you want when you want those potato chips?
I probably want something sweet, and then I talk myself out of having, if I could have anything at that point, it would be a banana with Nutella, just like spread over. But I haven't had that in months, maybe years. But that used to be when I was at my unhealthiest. That was my go-to. Or Cheez-Its and a Diet Coke. I mean, just terrible habits, and that's been years, since those. But so or probably want something sweet, and then I'm like, well, having chips isn't as bad as a candy bar or something like that. One thing that did work for me for a while is I would do like a protein bar then, but it was like a chocolate protein bar, so it was actually very, I don't know, it was healthier, but it triggered my brain into thinking I had something sweet, but it was 100-calorie protein bar versus,
Okay, so you like the Nutella, which is hazelnuts.
Oh,
so
yeah.
You could have like half a banana with a few hazelnuts.
Uh-huh.
And that doesn't give you the chocolate bit. In fact, if you go to my Instagram account, which is at Cuckow Dawn, you can get for free some sugar-free recipes, and there's one on there for chocolate balls, and it's basically involves raw cacao, or you can use cocoa powder, roasted hazelnuts, it's sweetened with dates, and I mean it's absolutely delicious, and you can just make these small little balls. It's also got milled chia in it, which gives you the omega-3 fats, which helps your blood sugar balance, which if that's part of what's happening for you at that time, can be useful. So something like that might actually work for you if you're wanting that chocolatey sweet thing.
That would absolutely work for me. That's a guaranteed work. That would be delightful.
and you're eating something healthy. It's sweet, but it's sweetened with dates, so they don't have those refined sugars. And it contains a lot of the nutrients that are actually good for your body.
Yeah, I love hazelnuts. Yeah, that's so simple. And Dawn, and one of the things I talk about a lot with my listeners is that we often make things so hard. And often the answer can be so simple. And just like what you just did for me. And it was like, oh yeah, I haven't had it in years, but just Nutella and banana. If I could have anything, it would be a Nutella and banana. And you're like, oh, so you much like hazelnuts. Why don't you eat hazelnuts? And it's like, yeah, why don't I eat hazelnuts?
You know what? Sometimes it just takes someone else to make the suggestion. But I think it's really about, rather than saying, well, I want banana with Nutella, but I can't have it because that's really bad for me. well, okay, that's what I fancy. What would give me that satisfaction without disrupting my body in the way that that the Nutella will do?
I love that. I love that. And yeah, I love that. And just taking one step further. That's wonderful, Dawn. Okay. This has been so good. Well, and I know you got to preview. I put all my stuff out there. And you got to the listeners got to preview a bit of your work. Can you tell people where they can find, you mentioned your Instagram, but tell people again about that and where they can find more about you and what you do.
Okay, well, the best place to go on my Instagram account or to my website, which is dawncuckow.com. So that's Dawn, then CUCKOW.com. And on there, you've got links to my book, which is called The Body Effect. And part one of the book will help you discover exactly what's triggering your cravings, your overeating, your belly fat, etc. Then part two of the book takes you through the step-by-step process that we've just talked about to tailor each step to your requirements. So to bring your body back into balance and to find a way of eating that works for you. And there's also chapters in there that will help you if you have cravings, what to, finding healthier options, that type of thing. What to do when the cravings hit.
Okay, so say the name of your book one more time.
Oh, I've actually got it here. It's called
even better.
I was all back to front because it's on Zoom, but it's called the Body Effect. Discover what's triggering your cravings and belly fat. Reveal your unique path to lasting weight loss. In fact, if you just type in The Body Effect into Amazon, it will come up, which might be easier than remembering how to spell my surname.
Well, if you guys are listening to the podcast and not watching the YouTube, her jacket matched her book so beautifully. I was like, oh, you're so put together, Dawn.
No prizes for guessing what one of my favorite colors is.
Dawn, thank you so much for helping us manage our stress, manage our health. Health is wealth, right? When we
absolutely.
Yes. Oh, so thank you so much. And thank you as always for helping us become a little more toxic person proof.
Well, thank you so much.